Hi folks, it's James here. Welcome to another instalment of my jazz collection. You may faintly be able to hear, very faintly, because I don't want to get into trouble. This is Kamasi Washington and Harmony of Difference, new jazz record that I bought last year. I'd heard a lot about his album The Epic, which is a big sprawling, I think it's a box set near enough. Couldn't afford that really, didn't know his music, so I wanted to find something a bit cheaper, so I picked this up. This is a lovely record. He's a Californian saxophonist, jazz musician. He's got a really amazing pedigree. He's worked with all kinds of people, and this album is very nice. It's quite rambustious. It's got some big band stuff on it. It's quite influenced by Charlie Mingus and other illustrious people from the jazz canon. It contains a lot of variations on a theme. You know, the same tunes coming back in different guises. Nice record. I've seen quite a few people show this on the VC, so I thought I would pick it up. So, no particular theme today. I'm going to whiz through some odds and ends that I've not shown yet. I'm going to stop doing the dating thing that I've been doing in the previous videos because I'm just running out of time. And I'm going to finish with some new jazz records, as in, they're not new albums, but they're new versions, remasters of old classics. So, to start with some other second-hand stuff, we've got an Atlantic, very, very shiny copy of John Coltrane's Giant Steps, which is a very fine album. Paul Chambers, his usual bass player, but it's got Art Taylor on drums, not Elvin Jones, who usually played with Coltrane. It's also got Jimmy Cobb and Winston Kelly and Tommy Flanagan, all three of whom worked with Miles Davis, of course. And yeah, possibly not my favourite Coltrane album, but still a good one. Moving into some quite, not very free territory, but certainly some quite good wild playing on that. Right, like I said, these are in no particular order. Got a album by Gene Krupa. This is Drum Boogie. Very, very influential swing drummer. Keith Moon was really inspired by him. And he was just a great showman, you know, one of the original jazz showmen, drummers. This is the big band era. I suspect this came from a box set, and I don't have any of the others. Oxfam, £2.49. I think that's the only Krupa record I have, so nice to have. I've seen a few people show this. This is Count Basie Plays and Joe Williams Sings. Count Basie records, they're kind of two to a penny really. You see them all over the place. I don't pick up a lot of them because I just don't have shelf space for them. This is a nice record, needs a bit of a clean. It's on MFP, Music for Pleasure. Every Day I Have the Blues. Obviously Basie was a very bluesy jazz pianist with some great signature licks. And then I have this record too, another Basie one. This is Basie and Sinatra. Nice record, Oxfam. $5.99 this one. It's got a nice gatefold with plenty of writing on it. This is on reprise. This next one was a charity shop find from the Lake District. Quick shout out to Chris here at Dixieland Farm. I know he's a big fan of Lionel Hampton. Great vibes player. Love the cover on this one. This is on the international label. Green RCA. So yeah, you can't beat a bit of Hamp's Boogie Woogie. Always puts me in a good mood. Just a couple of kind of cheap and cheerful jazz, Duke Ellington records. Got this one, The Masters of Jazz, Johnny Hodges, Cootie Williams, all the great names. Special purchase, 99p. This is a rather uninformative, not very inspired gatefold, but there it is nonetheless. And that is Curio. Looks like Curcio, sorry, maybe an Italian label. Yeah, a bit like Count Basie. I don't collect a lot of Ellington. I would do if I had a lot more space, you know. I've got a couple of really good, well in fact I've got one CD box set of Duke Ellington stuff, so I kind of feel like I don't need to own a lot of it on vinyl, but I will occasionally pick records up if I see them and they're dead cheap, which this one was. Yeah, I mean, Duke Ellington probably doesn't get his, you know, his just desserts anymore, if that's the right expression. You know, people are so into the bop era and the Blue Note era that the swing people often get forgotten. But, you know, Ellington was a composer. He wanted to be considered, you know, up there with all the great classical composers, and I think he succeeded to a large degree. I think he was an incredibly influential jazz musician. Right, slightly changing the period now and the style of jazz. This is Dave Bartholomew, who was a very important and influential jazz composer and arranger from New Orleans. Worked with Louis Armstrong, and there's lots of good classics on this. We've got When the Saints Go Marching In and Carnival Day, Who Drank My Beer While I Was in the Rear. So this is basically kind of old-time jazz, old New Orleans style jazz on the stateside label. I learned about Dave Bartholomew from reading the autobiography of Dr. John McRebenack, who obviously came from New Orleans and was deeply rooted in the traditions of that city. I think he took guitar lessons from the guy who had played in Louis Armstrong's band, I think. Maybe I've got that wrong. Anyway, Dave Bartholomew, fine New Orleans arranger. And then another early composer and musician, this is Fletcher Henderson, who was one of the architects in the early days of swing. He's not nearly as much of a household name as Duke Ellington, but he was really important in the transition from Dixieland jazz into the more kind of urbane and urban sounds of swing. This is rather a nice record, a portrait of Fletcher Henderson, 1925 to 1937. There's the label on that one. And yeah, a pianist. Nice thick cardboard stock on that one. Okay, where would any jazz collection be without a little bit of Brubeck? I think it was Steve Carlson who was pointing out recently that Brubeck's records, you can find them everywhere. You know, they're like Basie and Duke Ellington. Not quite sure what I think of the cover design for that one. Brubeck had always been recorded in a live setting, and then he recorded this album, and this was the first one that they did in a studio. So the band is not credited on the cover, but I assume it's his usual lineup. Joe Morello, amazing drummer who worked with Brubeck. He was a blind drummer who was so adept he could do a roll, he could do a one-handed roll. He pioneered a technique where he could just basically just roll a drum with one hand, which has to be seen to be believed. Okay, so going to finish up with three new reissues, and this one doesn't need much introduction. This is John Coltrane and A Love Supreme, one of the earliest jazz records I ever bought and listened to. This is an essential item in any jazz collection, obviously. Very heady, devotional, highly religious, I would say. This is John Coltrane, you know, playing to God, really. Amazing ensemble performance. McCoy Tyne and Jimmy Garrison and Elvin Jones playing with a deep sense of, you know, symbiotic relationship. Elvin with his wonderful, thunderous, rumbling drums. You've got McCoy Tyner with his absolutely volcanic cascades of piano, and Jimmy Garrison, not bringing up the rear, but Jimmy Garrison just making everything sound and feel great, you know, gluing it all together. Wonderful record, absolutely essential. It was really influential on rock music. You know, the Byrds loved it, and television loved it. It was loved by so many people. So that was a nice reissue, picked up a few years ago. There's the label. This is another reissue that I grabbed a while ago, wanting to get to know this record because I'd never really fallen in love with it too much on CD, and I wanted to have a nice vinyl copy of it that I could enjoy. This is Mingus R. Which was him, I think this was him trying to reconnect to a lot of kind of early jazz forms, and it's a very kind of noisy, it's a record which kind of seems to go out of its way to try and be liked. I often compare it to you know, it's like a puppy which is constantly leaping up at you, you know, trying to get your attention. It doesn't kind of lay back, it's not a cool record, it's very kind of upbeat and clamorous. And I sometimes find it a bit too much to deal with, you know, but I am pleased I picked up the reissue. Again, it's a record which is very influential on rock musicians. You know, lots of people say they love this record. One name that springs to mind is Robert Wyatt from the Soft Machine. Well, I mean, he loves all of Mingus, but he is often talked about this record. Joni Mitchell, obviously, as well, was influenced by Mingus, so another essential, really. And we're going to finish today with one of my favourite jazz records of all time. This is We Three, Roy Haynes, Phineas Newborn and Paul Chambers. Phineas Newborn, great post-bop pianist, and then Roy Haynes, the drummer. I learnt about this record again from Bill Bruford, from Yes and King Crimson. I also had a book of drum transcriptions. It was a book on post-bop, and it recommended this record, which is one of the reasons I bought it. And just to keep it as simple as I can, the post-bop drummers, so people such as Roy Haynes, Jack DeJohnette, people like that, they worked out a way of breaking up the usual jazz rhythm around the kit. So, you know, the early bop drummers, they had a certain rhythm on the cymbal, and then they would comp with the bass drum and the snare drum. But drummers such as Roy Haynes, they kind of broke things up a lot more, and they were using the kit in a much more creative way. And Roy Haynes had a very crackly, kind of dry, high sound, which is really difficult to imitate. Very crisp player. And this is a great record because it's a trio, you know, it's just drums, piano and bass, so you have no horns on there. So it's not stripped down exactly, but you don't have that thing that you get on a lot of horn records where it's great sheets of sound. It's all quite kind of brittle. So if you're interested in checking something out which is maybe a little bit off the beaten track, but which still has a great reputation, then this is a good one to go for. That's We Three by Roy Haynes, Phineas Newborn and Paul Chambers. Okay, that will do for now. I'm going to do another instalment showing my complete Miles Davis collection, after which I'm going to say that that's my jazz collection wrapped up. There are a few other things here and there, and at a future date I might go back and show some other stuff, and you know, no doubt I'll be picking up new jazz records anyway, so you haven't seen the last of me. So yeah, check out the Miles Davis video will be going up hopefully before too much longer, and I'll see you in that one. Hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.